All right, what's up, heathens? How are all of you guys doing today? I am here with Anti-Ordinary. We're going to be doing a little bit of an interview, let you get to know her and her channel. So if you will, go down below. There's a link to her channel. Subscribe right now. Anti-Ordinary, how are you doing today?
I'm okay, thank you. Hi, Heathens. And I make, I don't know, content, if you can call it that, here on YouTube. Um, yeah, I make atheistic and LGBT related content. That's my
Okay.
stick.
Okay. Yeah, I've watched a few of your recent videos, and it seems like you've got a really good head on your shoulders. I'm kind of curious. How do you like identify yourself, like as like an atheist or an agnostic, or what? How do you do that?
I would consider myself currently an agnostic atheist because I just feel like this is just my own thing and everyone's going to hate the video, but I don't feel like I can intellectually be honest and also claim that I know a God does not exist. That doesn't mean I believe it or even believe it's plausible, but I just don't think it's intellectually honest of me to consider myself a complete agnostic until we at least know some of the unanswered questions.
No, I think that's a very smart way to go about it. I myself am an agnostic atheist, so I'm right there with you. I'm kind of curious. What does like your religious past look like? Did you start out like as an atheist, or did you start out religious?
Well, I'm from England and we are a Christian country, and we actually are. We're not just like Americans saying we are, we actually are. And many, if not all, most people in the country practice at least some form of Christianity, although that is changing a bit more now with more secularism coming into our society. But I originally started off as a Christian, but I wasn't ever really, my family was never really devout Christians. They were just Christians on a Sunday, kind of.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's pretty much like what my dad is. I mean, he's Catholic, but like he only goes like on Christmas and Easter and the other times of the year when everybody else goes.
Yeah, like the
Um,
big community events, that's the same as my family.
oh, okay. So like is like your whole family that kind of Christian, or do you have some more like more family members that are like deeper into the faith?
Well, I don't really know because I never really spent very much time getting to know my family's belief systems other than my immediate family. So my mum, my dad, my sister, my adopted parents, and my sister. But I do have an extended part of the family kind of married into our family who are Sikh and Muslim. So we do have a few different faiths going on in my collective.
Oh, that's interesting. How did that work out? Like, whenever that happened, you said that it was kind of married in. Like, that was that a big issue in the family?
Yeah, it was, but it was kind of like a hush hush issue. So my parents don't know why, and it hasn't rubbed off on me very much, but they are not very accepting. Should I just say bigoted? Let's just use the straight up term of foreign people and of foreign religions. So when my extended family was married into my family, we would go around and do the casual family things, going around having dinner, getting to know one another, and all that stuff. And I was really young at this time, and we would have such a good time. We would be eating all these exotic foods and things. That's mostly what I remember about it. And as we left, I would always hear my parents saying just disrespectful things, but they would never say it in the presence of my other family members. So it was kind of odd for me because it was like, while we're there, we're all getting along. There seems to be no differences within us at all. But as soon as they left, it was like my parents would just bitch about all the differences between the culture and the religion, etc. So I found that a little bit difficult because I just viewed them as my family now, and part of me was like, oh my god, should I like my family?
Well, you know, honestly, that reminds me a lot of like my my family, because like I can just imagine like my stepfather, him being like, "I thought he was about to go Allahu Akbar on us." Like, I totally imagine him like as soon as them leaving, him being like, "Ooh, I was about to run for it there."
He sounds quite similar to my father.
Yeah. So like how did that affect like your own like I guess faith or spirituality? Like did that affect it at all? Like having those other faiths come in and really not seeing a difference?
Well, yeah, I think it did actually, because up until that point, I'd gone to Catholic school, although I was Christian. There's not very many Christian schools. So I went to a Catholic school, and up until that point, the only other religion I had met was this young girl who was the only girl that didn't have to go into the church because she was a Muslim. And that was my only experience of it. And when I had met some family related to me that had a different religion, even at such a young age, I didn't understand why my family, my unit, believed in something completely separate to some other members of my family. That really didn't make sense to me. But being such a young age, I kind of didn't pay much attention to it at the time. But later on in life, when I started thinking about these things in more depth, it was a key thing in my view was how could my family be so headstrong in their faith whilst accepting some other members of my family have a completely different faith when they both kind of believe each one are going to burn in hell for eternity. And I wasn't happy with any of them burning in hell for eternity.
Well, was there any one particular thing that got you to start questioning? Like, was that maybe the point where you started to question like your own faith, or was it something
I,
else?
I think my mum's homophobia actually triggered me starting to question my faith because I didn't come out to my parents, but I didn't identify as gay or any member of the LGBT when I was young because I didn't even know anything about the LGBT when I was young. But whenever we would see flamboyant men or masculine women on TV, both of my parents, but predominantly my mother, would make really dismissive remarks of them and like just be overall generally rude, not to me, but just in general. And I picked up on that and I thought, I kind of felt like I was different. And that's the only thing I knew about these people, that they were different. And I felt as though I was different. But I also felt as though I was a good person. At least I felt that way. And I didn't understand why, if I was like these people, just different, why I was somehow a bad person. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I realized it was my belief system that was telling me and my family that I was a bad person. And that really made me start, it never led me to atheism, but it led me to explore more spirituality and different branches of religion. And then eventually I settled down to agnosticism and then atheism.
Okay. Well, what other like branches of religion did you really look into? Like, did you look into like Hinduism, Buddhism, or was it like other things?
I started off because moved into care and I moved into a care home in East London. Well, actually, I moved into a care home somewhere in Kent. None of your audience will know any of these names, but somewhere more countryside in England. And I met this really genuinely nice Christian man, but he was quite an evangelical. He would always tell everyone about his faith all the time. But at that age, I wasn't too bothered about it yet because I hadn't become opposing religion. I was just questioning it. And because my family was never really a staunch religious people, I didn't learn too much about religion from them. I just learned this is what you're allowed to do, this is what you're not allowed to do, and because of God. So when I met this man who was a Christian, he was really inviting and he wanted to take me to church. And I was young and I wanted to get involved and go to church. And I would go to church with him. And it was really like warm. And there was a lot of nice people there that I met. But there was also a lot of, I'm not going to swear, there was also a lot of strange things that was going on. So I remember the first time, and I've gone in there and I've seen like these crowd of 4 people all dotted around the hall. So they weren't sat next to each other, but they were all talking to themselves in this unknown language. And I just thought they spoke a different language. And I asked the man who I'd gone to the church with what they were doing. And he was like, they're speaking tongues. It's what you do when the word of God is going through you. I remember those exact words. And being young and wanting to be in touch with spirituality or God or something, I sat there within 2 days, I was doing it. But in my mind, I wasn't doing it because God was making these weird sounds come out of my mouth. I was doing it because I saw these other people doing it. So I thought if I imitated it, it would mean the same. And then I thought, do I know that they're not doing the same as me? And there was a lot of other little quirky things in the Christian religion that eventually just was a bit too weird for me. And I just stopped exploring that part of my spirituality. And the person that introduced it to me, he was completely fine with it. I would always tell anyone I speak about my religious experience with that he would be the person I would point to as a good Christian, not as a true Christian, but as someone Christians always portray themselves as being.
Right, like he was just pretty non-judgmental and,
Kind, loving, warm, all the good words you could use to describe him.
right.
Non-judgmental as well, yeah, that would be one of them.
Okay, that's cool. So what did you explore other religions after that, or did you were you kind of in like a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like an in between kind of time where you just weren't religious or devoted to a specific religion?
Well, I guess so, looking back at it now, but currently, at the time, I mean, not currently, sorry, um, I considered myself a Christian, but I guess I was just a non-practicing Christian. I had the label and all that stuff, but I just didn't do anything. I didn't read a Bible, didn't pray, didn't go to church or anything. And then being in care, I happened to move around a lot. I ended up moving into East London, and East London has a high Muslim population, probably the majority population. And while I was there, I also met a lot of good Muslims, and I learned a lot about the faith, all the good stuff, of course, and a lot of things that I was ignorant to, that was pseudoscientific, but because I had no formal education at that point, and I still don't, but I've taught myself, some of it would make so much sense, and I would just grasp to it and accept it, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's a thing that a lot of Muslims like to say, and I still see it today on YouTube, that in the Quran, it states that there are 2 bodies of water and one cannot flow into another or something along those lines. And that would be fresh water and seawater. And then that's me being about 14, 15, thinking, oh my God, that makes sense. I always wondered why I couldn't drink seawater. That's why, God said. And so really stupid, dumb things like that really convinced me that the Quran was probably more accurate than Christianity. So I spent probably about a year learning, going to mosques, meeting different Muslims. But there is a really strong homophobic nature in Islam, and there's a strong homophobic nature in most religions, but for some reason it was more prominent and outspoken in my experience of Islam. So for example, I was walking down the street with someone I considered a really good man. He was teaching me a lot about Islam. And we saw this flamboyant boy. It's London. It's a melting pot. There's so many different people around. So it's not a surprise that we saw a flamboyant gay boy. We're not sure if he's gay, but he was flamboyant. And he just turned around and said to his fellow brothers that, oh my God, look how disgusting that is. And then they looked to me for kind of my opinion. And I agreed with them. I was like, yeah, it's so bad. And immediately, I mean, like, immediately, I completely regretted saying that. And I felt peer pressured into it. And I guess that kind of that reminded me of how homophobic my parents were, and that I felt that was derived from religion, and it was essentially the same. And the more I would learn about Islam and the Quran, I felt like it was a regional copy of the Bible. So it's like the Eastern copy of the Bible, but just with a few extra characters and a few little different things in it. But more or less, it's kind of the same. And when I moved from that place, I moved to Scotland, and there's a much lower, it's Muslim population in Aberdeen, Scotland. And so I wasn't surrounded by such an echo chamber of people that all believed in Islam. And just slowly over the course of 6 months, I just lost my interest in Islam for no real particular reason other than it didn't interest me to look into it anymore.
Okay. Yeah, and I have to say, I really do feel you on, walking with, a friend or whatnot and having them be very antagonistic towards somebody different than them. Because I remember when I was walking through this sort of strip mall that we have here, I was with some friends, and, a homosexual couple walked by and they all made fun of that couple. And I just found myself at that point, like, really removed from my friends, because I'm like, what's the big deal? I mean, two dudes holding hands. I don't understand what the problem is with that. Like, I don't know. I felt very out of place in my own friends. And, it was not at that point specifically, but over the course of time, I just really drifted away from them because of how, homophobic and how very right-wing leaning that they were. It was totally antithetical to what, I was becoming. So I definitely feel you on that.
Did you feel kind of pressured by your friends when they did make those remarks to kind of conform and agree to with their opinion?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I didn't, because I just sort of just didn't say anything because I didn't want to say anything in support, I guess, of the homosexual couple because, I was kind of the out person, but, that was part of a transition in my life where, I was moving away from that old, religious version of myself to the newer, very progressive version of myself, I will. That's one of the big differences between me, like now, as opposed to when I was growing up and when I was religious. I'm much more outspoken now, obviously.
Well, anyone's been on your channel will be able to say that.
Yeah. So now what brought you to the conclusion of becoming an agnostic atheist? Like what did that transition look like?
Well, after Islam, I was kind of more interested in, because like I said, I felt like they were regional copies of them. And so I wanted to understand where they originated from, firstly. And I learned a lot of different things, but I learned that a lot of Christian texts refer to Egyptian texts and have co-opted a lot of Egyptian belief systems and paganistic belief systems. So that led me to adopt paganism, but then eventually that also didn't feel right. It just felt a bit wishing for something to happen. And then from that moment, I kind of had a realization that I've been trying to find like a proven, like the true religion, so to speak. I've been trying to find the real religion, and it dawned on me that there might not even be a real religion. It all might just be kind of like Chinese whispers, but with beliefs. And all the way back in ancient Egypt, they believed something, and we just co opted that a little bit and changed it a little bit to fit our society. So I just essentially considered myself agnostic because I felt like I didn't consider myself atheist at all. I did, and I know that's a problematic term, but I did consider myself simply agnostic. And I would make a lot of arguments against atheists. I would always say derogatory things like atheists are stupid. Anyone that thinks like that is just stupid, however I would say it at the time. But then I came across, about when I was 17-ish, I started coming across the atheist YouTube community because I spent a lot of time on YouTube. And I started recognizing that a lot of the things that people were saying they felt and viewed the world in, I also felt that way, and I had no way of applying how I genuinely felt into a religion. But when I recognized that people within the agnostic atheist community kind of shared similar viewpoints to me without us even needing to discuss them, I kind of recognized that maybe I do fall into that category if I agree with them so firmly on so many topics.
Okay, so is there anything as far as like arguments you see the atheists throwing out? Is there anything that you still disagree with, or are are you pretty much solid on the atheist portion?
Oh no, I am solid on my atheist standpoint, but I do, like any community, have their rogue people, don't they? And before I considered myself atheist, I would come across a lot of um, atheist YouTubers who would be really dismissive of religious arguments, and they wouldn't necessarily provide a good enough argument against it. They would just be like, "Hi, you're stupid." That's it. And to me, it's like, yeah, of course it's stupid to believe a guy turned wine into water and water into wine and then walked on water. Like, that is a bit fucking silly to believe. But if people have been raised with that belief, it's not a adequate way of arguing against it because they just view you as the other. And I also think that the question of consciousness is still a huge one within psychology and science in general. And atheists, no science, no one. If you ask anyone and they give you any answer, then we don't know, they're lying. No one knows what consciousness is. We know that it could possibly be something in your brain acting a little bit cool and making it happen, or it could be a mixture of how you develop and how your brain develops. It could be, Christians would say it's a soul. I wouldn't say it could be a soul. I would say we just have a gap in science currently. But while we have questions so fundamental, open as who am I and who are you in the grand scheme of the universe, without relying on philosophy, then it's going to be hard for a lot of religious people to accept it, because I feel like a lot of religious people determine the world by how they feel and how they view the world, and that is more important than the cold hard facts of reality. And and I'm not the one to do it, I shitpost on my channel, but until we as a community can figure out adequate arguments against the soul and etc., then people are just going to dismiss the atheistic standpoint regarding those things.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, while on my channel, I do tend to try to laugh off a lot of the idiocy on the videos, I do try to follow it up with a little bit of like explanation as to why they're wrong. And I feel the reason why I do that is I feel like a lot of the, the atheist content that was on YouTube didn't really do a good job of bringing that. I wanted to bring extra information as to why they are wrong and not just tell them that they are wrong. So I'm glad that you feel the same way too. You know, being able to explain it, and it's not a bad thing to say I don't know. I mean, it's okay to have that gap in scientific knowledge.
Yeah, and I think you do a really good job of it. So you do your whole you're wrong and you're silly, but you also add the rationale behind it, which makes those statements, although they might be a little bit abrasive to a religious person, they're backed up with some sort of reasoning, if that makes sense. So I think that's what I really like about your channel.
Yeah, which actually, recently I've had a lot of religious people coming on to certain videos that are against, like, against people that aren't like part of their faith, like their particular sect of Christianity. And so, like, for instance, I think I had a Mormon person come on to a video about, I can't remember, I can't remember. I think it might have been an anti-Islam video, maybe, or maybe a different sect of Christianity. But he came on there and was like, "I love these videos." Oh no, it was our Bible podcast that we have. Sorry, I know I jumped at that. But no, it
That's
was
all
our
right.
Bible. Yeah, it was our Bible podcast that Casey and I do. He came on there and was like, "I love this series of videos because we're going through the Bible and I'm talking about it." Well, Casey's explaining it to me, and I'm just being a dumb fucker about it, basically. But yeah, no, I've had a lot of religious people come on there and really, you know, talk about how they're starting to like the content, even though I'm still pretty harsh on like religion and God and everything. They're still like, well, I can't fault you.
Yeah, see, I think us as atheists, if we're really trying to be more than antagonistic assholes, we do need to have some sort of understanding between atheist and religious people, because you can never convince a group of people to maybe agree with you on some topics if you just call them stupid and claim you are far superior to them. I would refer to the amazing atheist with that.
Yeah, no, TJ is definitely condescending. Like, I know I can be condescending sometimes, but I mean,
We all
he,
can be sometimes.
yeah, but I mean, he does kind of sit up on that intellectual high horse on more than one occasion. um, so I'm kind of curious, like, after coming out, or well, after becoming an atheist, like, did you let your any family member or close people to you know that you were an atheist, or no?
No, they still don't. Actually, I guess they do. I guess I've come out for the third time. So my dad knows I'm a atheist, and he really he's not very staunch in any religion. He believes there's a God. He calls himself a good Christian, but he's not. He just believes in God essentially. And we can't have a discussion about it because my dad is always right. He's always got to be right. That's just my dad, and I can't talk to him about something so fundamental as religion. I don't see. I because I'm trans, I cut off many of my friends after my transition, so I didn't have to deal with the whole coming out as atheist because I'd previously dealt with coming out as trans. And any person I've met forward from that day, I've just made it quite clear that I don't subscribe or believe in any religion. And it's just how it's been. I've always made it clear from day one to any of my new friends and acquaintances.
Okay. Well, no, I think that that's really good. I think that we need more outspoken atheists, and I'm glad that you're one of those. And I took a little bit to really come out to like family and friends and whatnot, but it's kind of like once I did, I was just like, fuck it, I don't care.
It's a bit liberating, isn't it? Once you've told people, it's like, oh, why is this such a big deal? It doesn't matter really. So
Mhm.
I felt that I felt so liberated once I'd finally figured out how I viewed the whole situation.
Right. I mean, do you like it how it seems like a lot of people aren't very religious until you say, "Well, I'm an atheist," and then all of a sudden they've got Bible in hand, cross their chest, and they're just like, "No, God is real, and I go to church every goddamn Sunday, motherfucker. What are you talking about? Get away from me with your heathen ways."
That's exactly what I'm talking about with my dad. He is in no way a religious person. Soon as I mention my lack of belief in a God, he's like, "How can you say that?" And there's giving me all of the reasons why the Bible's correct. I'm like, "You don't even care normally. It's only that I don't agree with you. Now you have to challenge me."
Yeah. Yeah, I always love that reaction. So I was wondering if you could like compare and contrast yourself like now, as an open atheist, and compared to before when you were religious. Like, is there a really big difference? Do you find like your personality is changed drastically?
Yeah, I genuinely do think it's changed drastically. I think when I was religious, I was a lot less skeptical and I was a lot less um, driven for answers and science. I didn't even give science really much thought. I didn't even care about it. But since I had essentially transitioned to being an atheist, I had found so many new questions that I had never realized I had ever had. But because I had never questioned it, it was all just as simple as God, God. So once I became agnostic atheist, at first it was a whole lot more upsetting because there wasn't answers. There were so many faults and so many sciences, but very few conclusive answers. I found that really hard to deal with because in religion, if you truly believe in it, you have all the answers. They're in the Bible, they're in the Quran, they're in the Bhagavad Gita, however you pronounce it. Um, And but in the long run, I do think that was a positive change because at first it made me recognize how truly stupid I am in the world and how the world works, that it really drove me into discovering science and discovering many different avenues of reasoning that I would never have come across had I had stuck to a religious path, because I would have just accepted something as simple as it being in the Bible or as simple as two pieces of water not mixing, instead of actually learning the chemistry and the science behind some of the questions that I have. Does that mean I get a conclusive answer? 90% of the time, no. But I feel more authentic in how I view the world. I feel like the world isn't exactly prettier, but it's more raw and true, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a very good way of looking at it. I mean, I know like I said before, one of the biggest differences for me was, basically just how I acted in general. I also had all this guilt lift off of my shoulders because I always felt guilty because I wasn't a good Christian. And so I know that you explored way more avenues to faith than I did. But, uh, I find it interesting how a lot of atheists after coming out, they either aren't all that much different or they're like drastically different, like as far as how they view the world and everything. So it's quite interesting. I'm kind of curious, what could you give any kind of advice for like a new or questioning person? Like what would be the best advice you could give a person like that, like a new atheist or a person that's questioning their faith?
Keep questioning. Don't You don't necessarily have to come to a clarity in non-belief because you have questions, but you should never stop questioning the things that you find curious because they might be what leads you to a better understanding of both yourself and the world we live in. At the moment you decide that you are just going to accept something because an authority figure like a priest or the pope or some other authority figure in religion as soon as you just accept what they say, you are doing yourself and the people you know a disservice, because you are choosing to blindly accept something rather than have the truth. And it comes down to the Matrix. We've all seen the Matrix. Do you want to take the blue pill or the red pill? And I would always say, take the one that gives you the truth, because at the end of the day, the truth might not be pretty, it might not be pleasing at first, but at least you're living a more authentic existence. And if you aren't a person questioning, then it will never matter to you. You will blindly believe what you want to believe. But if someone happens to be watching this video, or the only real advice I could give you is continue questioning, and don't stop until you have no more questions left to ask, which will probably be never.
No, that's really good advice. I mean, I question things, even till this day. So yeah, I can guarantee you're never going to stop questioning things. So now on to what your channel is about and everything. You said that you post like pro LGBT kind of videos. Is that where you started off, or did you just sort of come into that?
Well, I think like I started a YouTube channel about 2 years ago, and I made really just random things. My channel didn't have a place. It didn't have a reason. It was just anything I saw that I wanted to do or replicate, I would do it on my channel. And I deleted all that. And when I become more active in communicating with different atheist YouTubers or different people in the comments section of atheist videos, I really thought like maybe I could make content relating to LGBT issues and atheism. I still have like social commentary videos sometimes if something takes my fancy, but most of the time, if I'm doing an LGBT video, it is normally related to religion, and that just seems to be how the world goes.
Well, I know that there's a lot of interest in like new and upcoming atheist content creators. So I know that's why Godless Cranium, took such an interest in your channel. I know he watches a lot of YouTube apparently. So
I really appreciate you having a small fry like me. I have less than 500 subscribers. You dwarf me in subscriber count, so it's really nice and like welcoming, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, Godless Engineer.
Oh no, I thank you for coming on and being interviewed. I know a lot of people like these interview series or videos because they like connecting with new people in the community, and I like to be able to provide that for some people. And nobody's too small. Like, I mean, we all had to start out somewhere, and so there are some creators out there that have like subscriber counts that are like minimums, but I mean, I don't think that anybody's too small to prop up in the community, especially when they're doing a lot of good work. And I think that you're doing a lot of good work. So
well, thank you. That's coming from a channel like yours. That is amazing. Thank you.
Well, everybody, I hope that you will go and subscribe to Anti-Ordinary, which I have to say is a fantastic channel name, by the way. I mean, I think that's a really good channel name, a really good thing to build yourself on. So, but yeah, go down there, subscribe to her. I know she posts videos kind of regularly, so be expecting content from her, and it gets the GE seal of approval, I guess.
Thank you.
Well, it was great having you here, Anti-Ordinary, and I can't wait to see your new videos. I'm sorry, what?
It was great being here and talking with you.
No, yeah, well, the pleasure's all mine, really. I mean, I'm just glad to have you on the channel.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It does mean a lot for my, like I said, small fry of a channel.
All right, well, now you have a good rest of the day, and I guess you heathens have a great rest of the day, and I hope everybody does good.